I didn't realize when starting this how emotional this would be. I
Mm,
didn't even think of it. So that is definitely my favorite part is just connecting with people through similar stories and they share the same experience as you and you end up exchanging resources and you find a community and you're
right.
realizing you're not alone and you have people that you can relate to on a deeper level.
That quote comes from Nikki Green, the founder and owner of Victory Adaptive Collection and our guest today. I am Seth Carnell, and this is the Go Shout Love podcast. Victory Adaptive is a clothing line. More specifically, they create adaptive swimwear for children with disabilities. As it states on their website, the swimsuits are fashionable and functional, and adaptations are made to modify the swimsuits for individuals with all needs. This company focuses on inclusion, diversity, and embracing everyone for who they are, and these are very important topics for the Go Shout Love community. Victory Adaptive Collection is a company that can't help but put a smile on your face because it's inventive, it's creative, and incredibly resourceful for many kiddos and families like the ones we feature. There are a lot of everyday functions that people quite easily take for granted, including something so easy as clothing or the process of getting dressed. Many companies like this one come about through a personal experience or a relatability to an issue that needs attention. Nikki has 2 children, one of which is a daughter who has a diagnosis. It is through her experience and needs that the idea for this came about. With Nikki in this conversation is Josh Veach, one of the co-directors of Go Shout Love. Please take a second to rate and review our podcast. And here is Josh.
Nikki, welcome to the Go Shout Love podcast. It's so great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So you have a really cool company and a really cool story that called Victory Adaptive Collection, and we're going to get to some of the nuts and bolts of what you do, but you came kind of on our radar because you've done, I think Maddie, our March family, they had shared something about some products that they had gotten from you, and so that's kind of what brought you onto our radar about the cool work you're doing. So before we get into the work side of that, introduce us to Nikki, tell us about your family, and then kind of take that into how Victory Adaptive Collection came out of your family story.
Yes. Well, my name is Nikki Green. I am from Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a full-time working mom. I have 2 children. They are 8 and 12 years old. My youngest is a boy. His name is Ty. And my oldest, her name is Star. And she was born with a rare diagnosis, schizencephaly. And I also have an adaptive swimwear line for children with special needs.
And so that diagnosis of schizencephaly, am I saying that correctly?
Yes,
Okay.
schizencephaly. Yes.
Okay. That diagnosis is something that she was born with. Is that correct?
Yes.
So,
She was born with schizencephaly.
so if someone has not heard about that diagnosis and they're not sure what that is, tell us about that diagnosis and how it impacts Star's everyday life.
So what schizencephaly is, it's a rare developmental birth defect. It's characterized by having abnormal slits or cleft in the cerebral hemisphere of the brain. People with schizencephaly normally have developmental delays in speech and language skills, seizures, and other symptoms. And with Star, her schizencephaly is bilateral, so it affects both hemisphere of the brain. So she has developmental delays, seizures, abnormal speech, difficulty with like body movements, muscle weakness, and like overactive muscles, among other things.
So tell us how some of those how some of those things that have kind of impacted her day-to-day life. Tell us the real tangible things that maybe if someone's never walked in your shoes as mom to Star or to a kiddo like Star, what are some of the day-to-day things that a lot of people just take for granted? I know you've talked specifically about clothing, and we're going to get to that, but what are some of those things that, like, just the everyday functions that people walk through that don't think about how that might be different for somebody that has, that's affected by something like this?
Yes. Well, most of us don't think about the actual process of getting dressed.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if you have a child with cerebral palsy, fine motor skills can be like a challenge. So what I did was I replaced the closure with Velcro, and that can make a huge difference. Or if you have a child that has a feeding tube, instead of the caretaker like making certain adjustments, I made that modification for the individual who has a feeding tube.
Got
or
it.
if you have an individual who's incontinent, Velcro modifications has been added to both sides to make the dressing process simpler.
Okay. And so that's simpler for the parent if the caregiver is the one doing it, but also if the child is able to do that themselves, that almost kind of creates a little bit more empowerment for them and just more things in their control that maybe otherwise they may not be. Is that right?
Exactly. That's exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit outside of the diagnosis. Tell us about Star, and then also tell us about Ty.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, Star, she lives up to her name. She shines from within. She is a true extrovert. Man, she's a social butterfly. She's very adaptable. She's always happy. She's courageous. She's determined, and she has huge empathy for others. If I'm having a bad day or anyone around her is having a bad day, she'll always make sure to check on them and just say, "Hey, are you okay?" And she's very loving. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah. And what about Ty?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
And Ty, he's my youngest. He's 8 years old. He is the opposite. He's very shy. He's observant. But he's also adaptable, and he's great with Star because Star teaches him so much, and he teaches her so much as well.
Yeah. So how have you seen their relationship grow in ways that maybe you wouldn't have expected?
I love their bond. He honestly treats her like the typical sister, but he's also sensitive to her needs. Like, of course, they have that sibling fights. I love that. But he's also very sensitive to her needs, and anyone else in general who may be with different abilities.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about how Victory Adaptive, the Victory Adaptive Collection, the actual company, how that got started. Kind of I'm sure you had some hands-on frustrations with dressing Star and kind of finding things that worked for her. Tell us about the journey, and I think specifically you really focus on swimwear. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right now it's only swimwear, and that's where I decided to start out. So the journey, I had a lot of aha moments and
okay.
A lot of ideas that I wanted to get out. But one that stands out, would be a couple of years ago, we were out at a family outing at a local water park. And her and I had to use the restroom really bad, and it was urgent. And I was having trouble getting off her wet swimsuit because her muscles get stiff. So imagine having to use the restroom really bad and you can't get off your wet swimsuit. That alone was a challenge. So ever since then, I said there has to be something out there, and that's when I decided to create something of my own.
And so, what did the next steps look like?
So I found someone local, a local manufacturer. I reached out to her, and I began fabric shopping and making samples.
And so you were making those samples by yourself?
Well, no, I wasn't making samples. I was creating an idea, and I have someone making it for me.
Yeah. Awesome. And so did you have any sort of background in clothing design, or was this kind of all learn on the fly, just kind of driven by this new idea?
Yeah, I did not have any background in clothing design, but prior to starting Victory Adaptive, I did try to start a women's clothing company, but that was short-ended because I didn't have the resources. But
Sure.
I always found myself always thinking of ideas, and that cater to individuals with special needs.
Okay. So this is kind of take two on a more refined idea, really birthed out of a clear problem that you guys experience as a family, specifically with Star's situation.
That's correct.
And
yes.
so you are how many years into Victory Adaptive Collection? When did you get started? Or when was the aha moment that you just referenced?
Yeah. Well, I had several aha moments throughout the years, but the company has been going on for over a year now. I launched it over about a year and a half ago. I launched it.
So, Nikki, you mentioned this kind of aha moment in coming, the have to get to the restroom, can't get the swimsuit off a Star. How long ago, from a timing standpoint, was that aha moment?
Yes, that aha moment was a couple of years ago, but that moment stands out. That was a very memorable moment. So from then, I decided I have to do something and create a swimwear line, because there must be other families who may have this same challenges as well.
Sure. So this sparked you on this journey of, like you mentioned, getting samples, finding a manufacturer, and going into business. For someone who's never, if someone's listening and they've never really started a small business or been involved heavily in the behind the scenes of a business, there's so much that goes on to get anything done, even in the day-to-day, let alone start from something from scratch and then launch it like you did. So what has been, you said you've kind of been at this for a year and a half, 2 years, officially launched for over a year now. What has it been like for you as a mom to balance family and continue to do all the roles that you've taken on for your family, and then also try to give yourself to this new cause and this new business?
Yes, for a mom. From mom's aspect, it's really, honestly, it's challenging. There are moments where I get overwhelmed. My days are full, with Star. I have therapies, doctor's appointments, activities, along with my son. He has doctor's appointments, activities as well. But it can be done. You just have to squeeze in time for it.
Yeah, and probably give yourself some grace as far as expectations on timeline and when things are going to get done. You kind of just have to set some goals, but know that those goals have to be a little flexible too, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. You just take things one step at a time.
Yeah.
And just do what works best for you and your family.
Yeah. So you've launched this product, this business, and it's specific in that it's meeting the need for a very niche audience, right? The families that need this adaptive swimwear. How are you getting your product in front of these people and connecting and saying, hey, this is what we're all about, and this is we're solving a problem for you? How are you getting in front of those folks?
Yeah, a lot of the how I get it out a lot of times is social media and also word of mouth, because we spend a lot of times at therapy or doctor's office. So it's word of mouth and like different ads and social media.
Gotcha. Awesome. And so do you actually keeping those, do you have a set product line that you have in inventory, or are you making those as they are ordered?
No, I actually have a set product line that's in inventory.
In the work that we're doing, it's really encouraging when we get to hear from families as far as how the work that we're doing impacts their day-to-day lives. And I'm sure for you, there's a certain element of that too, being able to, as a small business, connect with your customers. Do you have any stories? Are you getting any feedback from families that kind of remind you that this is what you're all about? This is why you're doing what you're doing?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't realize when starting this how emotional this would be. I didn't even think of it. And so that is definitely my favorite part, is just connecting with people through similar stories, and they share the same experience as you, and you end up exchanging resources, and you find a community, and
Right.
you're realizing you're not alone, and you have people that you can relate to on a deeper level. So I get pretty attached to a lot of the families and the stories that they share.
Sure.
But overall, the wins, I love hearing the positive feedbacks, and that your product works, and seeing them wearing and supporting your brand.
Yeah.
That's always a great feeling. And I do get a couple of feedback. I have some stories where a mother who has a child with Down syndrome, and she told me, like when her child has to use a restroom, it's normally a last minute thing. So with some of my swimsuits, I also Velcro. I offer Velcro on both sides of the hips, and that helps with making the process of using the restroom faster.
Yeah.
Or like another parent shared a story where her child has a G tube, and they were out on a family outing, and normally they have to step away because a swimsuit may not have the accommodation for the cutout for the feeding tube. So with my swimsuit, she said that helps. So that's always good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that's encouraging for the family every time they get to take advantage of clothing that is swimwear that's adaptive like that. It's really, it's more time with the family. It's less disruption. It's more time that they get to do the things that they want to do as a family and spend more time instead of more time in the bathroom or more time getting out of a clothes to get a feed in. And so that's really cool because what you're doing for them, what you've created for them is very tangible, but the benefits that they get are intangible. It's the emotional elements of more time doing the things they want to be doing, as far as building those relationships and bonding with their family instead of the functional inconvenience of having to rearrange everything to get into a bathroom that's probably not that's already difficult to navigate for them if it's not a handicap accessible for a larger child especially. And so it's really cool that what you're doing is meeting a very tangible need, but also the underlying emotional elements that come with just being able to create more normalcy for those kids and families. What a cool thing. What would you say has been the biggest win for you personally in this journey, whether personally just as an individual and leader or personally for you like within the business?
The biggest win for the company would be how far it has come, because I believe I went through like every emotion. I wanted to quit several times with balancing out work, kids, running a business. It can all become overwhelming. I had to keep in mind in the why that I started. So that would be one of the biggest wins. And then also, as I mentioned, connecting with families and hearing and sharing stories, that's always awesome.
Yeah. You referenced, challenging moments, even, being tempted to throw in the towel at certain times. What have been some of those kind of challenging moments that you've had to work through and get to the other side of in order to still be here?
Yeah. Let's see. As I said, just with balancing out work and family and kids and all the fun stuff, it can get tough. But I had to remind myself, constantly remind myself, like, hey, you got this. Don't quit.
On that line, as far as juggling all the appointments and therapies in addition to running the business and just being an awesome mom, what advice you've had to learn I'm sure some tips and tricks on how to get through those things. What advice would you have for other individuals who have a dream of starting a company or starting a nonprofit or doing something that kind of is birthed out of their own personal aha moments, but have a very full plate? What advice would you give to those folks?
I would say, take it one step at a time. Find something you believe in. And if you want to do it, just, do it. You have to, if you're busy, just make time for it when you can. And just taking it one step at a time. And always remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
You have to have patience. You have to be your biggest cheerleader. You're going to have lots of internal talks with yourself, and some are negative, but you have to reinforce that with the positive.
Yeah.
And you're going to go through every emotion, but forgetting the mission and the why not forgetting the mission and the why that you started is key. And also, it's all about balancing, and just it's a balance everything.
Yeah.
And everything will always work out.
Yeah. We are interviewing this in the middle of, we're having this conversation in the middle of I don't know what it will become. I don't know what it will go down in history as known as, but I'm going to call it the Great Quarantine of 2020 or something like that. So we are, and as business owners, you mentioned the internal voice, and like as business owners in a season of small business owners in a season of unknown like we're in right now, that internal voice is all over the place. It is for me at least. I don't know if that's the case for you, but there's so many unknowns. And so the advice that you just gave, as far as like, it's almost, there's a certain element of, you almost just have to own those thoughts and say, okay, once you start getting too far into something that's just too far out of your control or too far in the future, you just kind of have to like own them and lock them up and say, okay, can't live there. I got to figure out what are the things that I can manage today. What are the things that I need to plan for tomorrow, like literally tomorrow. And then let's tackle those things. Let's stay busy doing the things that we know that we can control. And that, I think that's legitimate for any business owner, anybody that's going through anything difficult, but especially in a season of uncertainty. And so thanks so much for sharing your story with us and your journey. And your products are awesome. We love seeing products that are created for the families and that we love in mind. And this is definitely one of them. And so I also want to say thanks, Nikki. You have been one of our sponsors for Maddie's Month in March here, and so you were one of our silver sponsors. And thank you so much for doing that and helping us tell Maddie's story. And so we want you, if you're listening, to for sure check out Nikki's website, victoryadaptivecollection.com. Right? I'm gonna make sure I got that right, and we'll definitely include that in the show notes as well. And spring season is right around the corner, and so it's going to be time. Your kids are going to need a new swimsuit, and so we know just the people to help you get there, and that's Victory Adaptive Collection. And so, Nikki, where else can a listener follow along with your family, with your story, and with your brand?
Yes, well, they can find the products online at victoryadaptivecollection.com, as you mentioned, and also they can keep up on social media. That's at Victory Adaptive.
Awesome. Okay, and you're on Facebook and Instagram as well?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm more active on Instagram, but they can definitely follow on Facebook and Instagram at Victory Adaptive.
Okay, well, we will be sure to include those links in the show notes. So if you're listening, make sure that you check out those show notes to head over to Nikki's website to shop, and then also be sure to follow her on Instagram and or Facebook and keep up with all the good stuff that they're doing. Nikki, thank you so much, and we are really appreciative of you taking the time to do this, and we're wishing you and your whole family the absolute best.
Thank you for listening. Stay tuned as we have some very exciting episodes ahead that you will not want to miss, beginning with our next episode, which features Shane Burkaw and Hannah Aylwood. Shane and Hannah have a popular YouTube channel called Squirmy and Grubs. Feel free to check them out while you wait for the next episode. We sincerely love producing this podcast, and we hope that you are enjoying the episodes as well. It would help us if you would leave a review and rate us so that we may be able to shout love a little louder as we keep going. And now, there aren't a lot of places that you can go right now, but you can go to our website, goshout.love, and shop around and still make an impact on the world while you are at home. We are very grateful to our entire community. You guys are awesome. And I will leave you with one last encouragement. Simply keep it up and go shout love. Thanks.